Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked down at the busy street below. The construction site on the 40th floor gave him a perfect view of downtown Denver. Cars moved like tiny ants between the tall buildings. He had been working construction for 8 years now, and loved the feeling of building something real with his hands. The morning sun was getting hot, and Jake took a drink from his water bottle. His work crew was busy installing steel beams for what would become another office building. Jake was good at his job. He was strong, careful, and never missed a day of work. At 28 years old, he was one of the youngest crew leaders on the site. Jake was checking the crane cables when something strange happened. The air around him started to shimmer like heat waves on hot asphalt. He looked up at the sky, but saw no clouds or storms coming. The other workers kept doing their jobs and seemed to notice nothing unusual. The shimmering got stronger, and Jake felt a weird tingling sensation on his skin. He tried to call out to his friend Danny, who was working nearby, but no sound came from his mouth. The world around him began to fade like an old photograph losing its color. Jake felt his body becoming light as if he was floating in water. The construction site, the noise of the city, and even the hot Denver sun all disappeared. Everything went black, and Jake felt like he was falling through empty space. When Jake opened his eyes again, he was lying on what looked like a bed made of smooth crystal. The room around him was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls curved upward and seemed to glow with a soft blue light. Strange symbols floated in the air above him like holographic displays. Jake sat up quickly and looked around. The room was large and empty, except for the crystal bed and some furniture that looked like it was carved from single pieces of white stone. There were no windows, but somehow light filled the entire space. The air smelled clean and had a faint sweet scent like flowers. He stood up and realized he was still wearing his work clothes and boots. His hard hat and tool belt were gone, but everything else was the same. Jake walked to what he thought might be a door, but it was just a smooth section of wall. He pressed his hands against it, but nothing happened. A soft sound made him turn around. Part of the wall had opened, and a tall figure walked into the room. Jake stepped back in shock. The being looked human, but was clearly not from Earth. She was nearly 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Her hair was long and silver like liquid metal. Her eyes were large and completely black, with no visible pupils. She wore a flowing robe that changed colors as she moved. Around her neck was a collar made of what looked like tiny stars. When she spoke, her voice was musical, but somehow Jake could understand every word. "Greetings, human Jake Miller," she said. "I am Princess Lyra Vextera of the Zephyrian Empire. You have been brought here by our command." Jake found his voice and stepped forward. "What the hell is going on? Where am I? How do you know my name?" The princess moved gracefully to the center of the room. "You are aboard our vessel, far from your world Earth. We have been observing your species for many cycles. You were chosen specifically for your genetic qualities and physical health." "Chosen for what?" Jake demanded. "I want to go home right now. Take me back to Earth." Princess Lyra looked at him with those strange black eyes. "That is not possible. Your presence here serves a greater purpose than your individual desires. My people face extinction. Our bloodline has become weak through centuries of selective breeding. We require new genetic material to survive." Jake felt cold fear creeping up his spine. "What are you talking about? What do you want from me?" "You will help us reproduce," the princess said simply. "Your human DNA is compatible with our species. Our scientists have confirmed this through extensive testing of your people. You will participate in our breeding rituals to create hybrid offspring." Jake backed against the wall. "Are you insane? I'm not doing anything like that. I don't care what your problems are. Send me home now." The princess tilted her head as if studying a strange insect. "You do not understand. This is not a request. It is a command from the royal court. Your cooperation is required for the survival of millions of Zephyrians. I don't care about your people, Jake shouted. I didn't ask to be here. I have a life. Back on Earth. I have friends, a job, a girlfriend. You can't just kidnap me and expect me to go along with this crazy plan. Princess Lyra seemed genuinely puzzled by his anger. Your previous existence is irrelevant now. You will be well cared for here. You will live longer than any human has before. You will father children who will help save an entire civilization. This is a great honor. Jake felt rage building inside him. Honor? You stole me from my life. This isn't honor, it's slavery. The princess remained calm. Your emotional response is noted, but changes nothing. The decision has been made by powers far greater than either of us. Rest now. Tomorrow you will begin learning about our culture and your role in it. She turned to leave, but Jake grabbed her arm. Her skin felt cool and somehow electric. Please, he said. Just let me go home. Find someone else who wants to do this. Princess Lyra looked down at his hand on her arm with surprise. No one has touched royal blood without permission in centuries, she said quietly. You truly are different from what our studies predicted. She gently removed his hand. Sleep, Jake Miller. Your new life begins tomorrow. The princess left and the wall sealed behind her. Jake was alone again in the glowing room. He pounded on the walls and shouted until his voice was hoarse, but no one came. Finally, he sat on the crystal bed and tried to make sense of what had happened to him. He was trapped on an alien ship, light years from Earth, chosen to be part of some breeding program for a dying alien race. The beautiful but cold princess expected him to just accept this fate and cooperate. Jake looked around the strange room that was now his prison. He had always been a fighter, and he wasn't going to give up now. Somehow, some way, he would find a way back to Earth in his old life. But first he needed to learn more about these aliens and their ship, as the glowing walls dimmed to simulate night. Jake lay back on the crystal bed and started planning his escape. Jake woke up to find a small device sitting on the crystal table beside his bed. It looked like a silver earpiece with tiny glowing wires. When he picked it up, the wall opened and a different alien entered. This one was shorter than the princess, but still tall by human standards. Her skin was the same pale blue, and her hair was white instead of silver. I am Dr. Kira Nathara, she said in the same musical voice. I am the chief geneticist for this mission. That device will help you understand our language better. Jake looked at the earpiece suspiciously. What does it do? It connects with your brain to translate our words perfectly. It also allows you to speak our language when needed. There are no harmful effects. Jake hesitated but realized he needed to communicate if he wanted to find a way home. He placed the device behind his ear. Immediately he felt a slight tingling sensation and the doctor's words became clearer and more natural sounding. Better? Dr. Kira asked. Yeah, I guess so, Jake said. Now can you tell me how to get back to Earth? The doctor looked puzzled. Why would you want to return to such a primitive world? Here you will have access to technology beyond your imagination. You will live for centuries instead of mere decades. Jake stood up and faced her. Because it's my home. Because I didn't choose to come here. Because what you're doing is wrong. Dr. Kira tilted her head, the same way the princess had done. Wrong. We are trying to save our entire species from extinction. How can that be wrong? By kidnapping people and forcing them to do what you want, Jake said angrily. The doctor seemed genuinely confused by his anger. But you are just one human among billions. Your absence will not harm your species. Your presence here will save millions of Zephyrians. Jake realized these aliens truly did not understand why he was upset. To them, his individual rights meant nothing compared to their collective survival. Let me ask you something, he said. How would you feel if I took you away from your home and told you that you had to do something you didn't want to do? Dr. Kira thought for a moment. If it would save my people, I would consider it my duty. Even if you never saw your family again, even if you had no choice in the matter. The doctor was quiet for a long time. We do not form emotional attachments the way your species does. Family bonds are ... different for us. Jake sensed an opportunity to learn more. What do you mean different? Zephyrian children are raised communally. We do not have the intense, personal relationships that your studies show humans possess. Perhaps this is why you resist, while we would accept. Dr. Kira gestured for Jake to follow her. Come, you should see more of our ship and learn about our situation. Understanding may help you accept your role here. They left the room and walked down a long hallway that curved gently upward. The walls were made of the same glowing material, and symbols floated in the air at regular intervals. Jake saw other Zephyrians walking past, but they barely glanced at him. They all moved with the same graceful, flowing motion and spoke in quiet voices. How many of you are on this ship? Jake asked. Nearly 5,000, Dr. Kira replied. This is one of our largest vessels. It serves as both a research station and a home for our expedition. They entered a vast room with a high ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. Gardens filled the space with plants that Jake had never seen before. Some had leaves that glowed softly while others seemed to float. In the air without soil, the air smelled sweet and fresh. This is our cultivation center, the doctor explained. We grow food and maintain atmosphere here. Everything is carefully controlled for optimal efficiency. Jake noticed that the Zephyrians working in the gardens moved slowly and seemed to tire easily. Even simple tasks like carrying small containers appeared to exhaust them. Are your people sick? He asked. Dr. Kira sighed deeply. Not sick, but weak. Centuries of genetic manipulation have made us physically frail. We are intelligent, and our technology is advanced, but our bodies are failing us. She led him to a large window that looked out into space. Jake gasped when he saw the view. Thousands of stars filled the darkness, and in the distance he could see other ships like the one they were on. Some were even larger and shaped like crystals or flowing ribbons. This is our fleet, Dr. Kira said. 12 ships carrying the last survivors of our homeworld. Our planet died 50 years ago when our sun began to collapse. These ships are all that remain of the Zephyrian Empire. Jake felt a stab of sympathy despite his anger. I'm sorry about your planet, but that still doesn't give you the right to kidnap people. Perhaps, the doctor said quietly, but desperation makes people do things they would never consider otherwise. They continued walking, and Dr. Kira showed Jake the ship's library, where holographic books floated in organized patterns. She showed him the medical bay with equipment that could heal injuries instantly. She showed him art galleries filled with sculptures that moved and changed shape as you watched them. Everything was beautiful and amazing, but Jake noticed something else. The Zephyrians were all polite and efficient, but they showed no joy or excitement. They spoke in quiet voices and rarely touched each other. Even their art was perfect, but somehow cold. Don't your people ever laugh or smile? Jake asked as they watched a group of Zephyrian children learning mathematics through floating equations. Excessive emotion is considered primitive, Dr. Kira replied. We have evolved beyond such basic responses. But don't you miss it? Don't you ever want to just have fun or be spontaneous? The doctor looked at him strangely. Why would anyone want to be unpredictable? Chaos leads to inefficiency and mistakes. Jake shook his head. Chaos also leads to creativity and growth. Some of the best things in life come from unexpected moments. That evening, Dr. Kira brought Jake to a dining hall, where hundreds of Zephyrians ate their meals in near silence. The food was nutritious, but bland, designed for efficiency rather than pleasure. Jake found himself missing the taste of a simple hamburger or pizza. As they ate, Princess Lyra approached their table. She moved with the same flowing grace, but Jake noticed she watched him more carefully than the others did. How are you adapting to our ship? she asked. I'm not adapting, Jake said firmly. I'm learning about you so I can figure out how to get home. The princess sat down across from him. You continue to resist what cannot be changed. This is illogical. Maybe it's illogical to you, but it's human to me, Jake replied. We don't just accept things because someone tells us to. We fight for what we believe in, even when fighting is futile. Especially then. Princess Lyra was quiet for a moment. Tell me about this fighting spirit. Our studies show humans engage in constant conflict with each other. Why do you value such a destructive trait? Jake thought about how to explain it. It's not about destruction. It's about not giving up when things get tough. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. It's about never stopping until you find a solution. But we have found a solution, the princess said. You will help us reproduce, and our species will survive. That's not a solution, Jake said. That's just using people. A real solution would be something that helps both of us. Princess Lyra looked confused. How could any solution help humans? Your species will continue to exist whether you are here or not. Jake realized she truly could not understand his perspective. To her, individuals were just parts in a machine, important only for what they could contribute to the whole. But maybe he could help her see things differently. Princess, he said, what if I told you that humans have something your people need beyond just genetics? What if we could offer you something that might be even more valuable than DNA? The princess leaned forward slightly, the first sign of real curiosity Jake had seen from any Zevorian. What could primitive humans possibly offer an advanced civilization like ours? Jake smiled for the first time since arriving on the ship. Let me show you. Jake had been on the ship for 5 days when the alarms started blaring. The soft blue lights in the hallways turned red, and strange symbols flashed urgently in the air. He was in his room when Princess Lyra burst through the door, her usual calm demeanor replaced by clear worry. We are under attack, she said quickly. You must come with me to the command center. Attack by who? Jake asked as he followed her down the corridor. The Vrector. They are an ancient enemy of our people. They must have detected our fleet. They moved through hallways filled with Zephyrians running in organized patterns. Jake noticed that even in crisis, they remained orderly and quiet. No one shouted or showed panic, but he could see fear in their large black eyes. The command center was a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the space around their ship. Jake gasped when he saw dozens of dark angular vessels approaching. Their fleet. The enemy's ships looked like flying razors, all sharp edges and weapon ports. Princess Lyra took her position at the center of the room, where holographic displays surrounded her. Other Zephyrians sat at stations along the walls, their hands moving over glowing controls. Report, the princess commanded. 50 Vrector attack ships approaching from multiple vectors, came a voice from one of the stations. They have already destroyed 2 of our scout vessels. Jake watched as red dots representing enemy ships moved closer to the blue dots of the Zephyrian fleet on the main display. The enemy formation was tight and aggressive, while the Zephyrian ships moved in careful, predictable patterns. Defensive Formation 7, Princess Lyra ordered. All ships maintain maximum distance and fire when targets enter optimal range. The Zephyrian fleet began to spread out in a perfect geometric pattern. Their weapons fired in coordinated bursts, at precisely calculated intervals. It was beautiful to watch, but Jake could see it wasn't working. The enemy ships were too fast and too unpredictable. We are losing ships faster than we can disable theirs, reported Dr. Kira from a nearby station. Their attack pattern is chaotic, but effective. Jake watched the battle unfold and felt frustrated. The Zephyrians had superior technology, but they were fighting like robots. Their movements were predictable, and their tactics were based on mathematical models rather than adapting to what the enemy was actually doing. Princess, Jake said, stepping forward. Your strategy isn't working. She turned to him with surprise. You know nothing of space combat. Human, maybe not, but I know fighting, Jake replied. I've been in plenty of bar fights and construction site disputes. Sometimes you have to stop thinking and start reacting. Another alarm sounded as two more Zephyrian ships exploded on the display. The enemy was getting closer to the main fleet. Your people are too predictable, Jake continued. The enemy knows what you're going to do before you do it. You need to be random, chaotic, unexpected. Princess Lyra looked uncertain. Chaos leads to disaster. Order and planning ensure victory. Not always, Jake said urgently. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and improvise. Let me help coordinate the defense. Impossible. You lack the knowledge and training. Another ship died in a flash of light, and Jake lost his patience. Your training is getting your people killed. Try something different, or watch your entire fleet get destroyed. The princess stared at him for a long moment, while explosions lit up the space around them. Finally, she nodded to one of the operators. Give him a communication link to all ship commanders. Jake found himself with a headset that connected him to the captains of every ship in the fleet. Listen up, he said, his voice carrying 200s of Zephyrian officers. Stop following your formation patterns. I want every ship to do something unexpected right now. What do you mean? Came a confused voice. Pick a random direction and fly that way as fast as you can. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Just do it. This is madness, another captain protested. Do it, Princess Lyra commanded. Overriding their objections, the organized Zephyrian formation suddenly scattered in all directions. Ships that had been moving in careful patterns began flying erratically. The enemy formation, which had been perfectly positioned to attack the predictable Zephyrian arrangement, suddenly found their targets gone. Now, Jake called into the headset, every ship fire at the enemy closest to you, but don't aim where they are. Aim where you think they might go next. The Zephyrian weapons began firing in seemingly random patterns, but Jake's strategy worked. The enemy ships, expecting coordinated attacks from predictable angles, found themselves flying into weapon fire from unexpected directions. It's working, Dr. Kira called out in amazement. Enemy ships are taking heavy damage. Jake watched the display as the tight enemy formation began to break apart. Good. Now I want half the ships to group up and charge straight at the biggest enemy vessel. The other half should hang back and pick off any enemies that try to run. A frontal assault is suicide, one of the captains protested. Not if they're not expecting it, Jake replied. Trust me. Princess Lyra gave the order, and half the Zephyrian fleet formed up into a loose attacking group. They charged directly at the largest fractor ship while the remaining vessels spread out to cut off escape routes. The enemy commander, expecting another careful, calculated attack, had positioned his forces to counter a methodical assault, when the Zephyrians came straight at him in what appeared to be a desperate suicide run. He was caught completely off guard. All ships in the attack group, Jake called out. Don't slow down, don't stop, and keep firing until you're past them. Then, turn around and do it again. The Zephyrian ships slammed through the enemy formation like a battering ram. Their weapons fired continuously as they passed through the surprised Vrokter fleet. Before the enemy could react, the attacking ships had wheeled around for another pass. The enemy formation collapsed into chaos as they tried to respond to attacks coming from multiple directions at once. Ships collided with each other as they attempted to reform their lines. The careful Vrokter battle plan fell apart under the unpredictable human-inspired assault. Within an hour, the surviving enemy ships were retreating. The Zephyrian fleet had lost only 4 vessels compared to over 30 enemy ships destroyed or disabled. It was a complete victory achieved through tactics that went against everything the Zephyrians had been taught about warfare. As the clear signal sounded, the command center erupted in a very un-Zephyrian display of excitement. Officers actually raised their voices and some even smiled. Princess Lyra stared at Jake with an expression he had never seen before. "How did you know those tactics would work?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "I didn't know for sure, but I could see. Your way wasn't working, so I tried something different. Sometimes being unpredictable is better than being perfect." Dr. Kira approached them, her usual calm replaced by obvious excitement. "The psychological profiles of the enemy suggest they rely on anticipating opponent behavior. Your chaotic strategy made that impossible." "Exactly," Jake said. "You can't plan for everything. Sometimes you have to adapt on the fly and trust your gut feelings." Princess Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Your species possesses strategic capabilities we did not anticipate. This changes our assessment of human value. We're not just breeding stock," Jake said firmly. "Humans have minds and hearts and spirits. We have things to offer besides DNA." The princess nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is more to learn from your people than we originally thought." As they left the command center, Jake noticed that the other Zephyrians looked at him differently now. Instead of seeing him as a primitive specimen, they watched him with curiosity and something that might have been respect. For the first time since his arrival, Jake felt like he might have some leverage in his situation. He had proven that humans could contribute more than just genetic material. Now he needed to figure out how to use that to help both species, while finding his way back to the life he had lost. But as he walked beside Princess Lyra through the glowing corridors, Jake realized that his feelings about the situation were becoming more complicated than he had expected. After the battle with the Vrykter, everything changed for Jake aboard the Zephyrian ship. Officers who had barely acknowledged his presence now stopped to speak with him in the corridors. Dr. Kira brought him technical problems to solve, curious about human approaches to engineering challenges. Most significantly, Princess Lyra began spending hours with him each day. They would walk through the ship's gardens while she asked endless questions about human culture, emotions, and decision-making. Jake found himself explaining concepts that seemed obvious to him but were completely foreign to her. "When humans fall in love?" the princess asked one day, as they sat beside a fountain that played music as the water fell. "Do they choose their partners based on genetic compatibility?" Jake laughed, a sound that still made nearby. Zephyrians turned to stare. "Sometimes, but not the way you mean. We choose people who make us happy, who we enjoy being with, who understand us. But that seems so inefficient. How can you build a stable society on such random pairings?" "It's not random," Jake explained. "It's just based on different things than what your people value. We care about feelings and connection, not just whether our children will be genetically optimal." Princess Lyra was quiet for a long time. "I do not understand these feelings you describe. When I look at potential mates chosen by our council, I feel nothing except duty." "What do you feel when you look at me?" Jake asked, then immediately regretted the question when he saw her confused expression. "I do not know," she said slowly. "Something different. Something that our language does not have words for." Over the following weeks, Jake learned more about Zephyrian reproduction. It involved a complex ritual called the bonding, where two individuals would link their minds permanently through advanced technology. The process would extend Jake's lifespan to match theirs and allow him to father children with multiple females. "The bonding is not reversible," Dr. Kira explained during one of their technical sessions. "Once completed, you would be permanently altered. Your brain chemistry would change to match ours. You would think differently, feel differently." "You mean I would become like you?" Jake asked, with growing alarm. "Not exactly like us, but closer to us than to your current state. The emotional extremes of your species would be dampened. You would become more logical, more controlled." Jake felt sick. They wanted to erase the very qualities that made him human. "What if I refuse?" Dr. Kira looked uncomfortable. "The Royal Council has decreed that the bonding will take place. Refusal is not considered possible." That night, Jake could not sleep. He paced his crystal room, thinking about everything he had learned. The Zephyrians saw him as a solution to their problems, but their solution would destroy who he was. He would survive in body, but lose his humanity in the process. The next morning brought shocking news. Dr. Kira arrived at his room with a grim expression. "There is something you must know," she said. "You are not the only human we have acquired." Jake felt cold dread wash over him. "What do you mean? Other ships in our fleet have captured human males from different regions of your planet." The Royal Council approved a broad collection program to ensure genetic diversity. "How many?" Jake demanded. 37 humans total, spread across our 12 ships. Jake exploded with rage. "You kidnapped 37 people. Do you have any idea what you've done to their families, their lives?" Dr. Kira stepped back from his anger. It was necessary for the program's success. Relying on a single individual would be inefficient. "Where are they? I want to see them." "That is not possible. They are on other vessels, beginning their own preparation for the bonding ritual." Jake grabbed the doctor by her shoulders. Something that shocked her deeply. "You have to let them go. All of them. This is wrong, and you know it." "I know no such thing," Dr. Kira replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Release me immediately." Jake let go, but continued to stare at her intently. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you think this is right. Tell me you would want this done to your people." The doctor could not meet his gaze. "The survival of our species takes precedence over individual concerns." "Individual concerns?" Jake shouted. "These are people's lives. They have families who think they're dead. They have dreams and hopes and futures that you've stolen from them." Princess Lyra entered the room, drawn by the raised voices. "What is the cause of this disturbance?" Jake turned his fury on her. "Did you know about the others? Did you know your people kidnapped 37 men?" The princess lifted her chin proudly. "Of course. It was my recommendation to the council. A single human could not provide sufficient genetic material for our needs." Jake felt betrayed in a way he had not expected. Over the past weeks, he had begun to think of the princess as someone he could trust, maybe even care about. Now, he realized, she saw him as nothing more than breeding stock. "I trusted you," he said quietly, his anger turning to cold determination. "I thought you were different from the others." "I am exactly what I have always been," Princess Lyra replied. "A leader who will do anything necessary to save her people, even if it means becoming monsters in the process." The princess looked genuinely puzzled. "How does saving our species make us monsters?" Jake realized that she truly could not understand the moral implications of their actions. To her, individuals were just resources to be used for the greater good. But maybe he could make her understand by appealing to something she did value. "Princess, what if I told you that your actions might actually destroy your people instead of saving them?" Both aliens looked at him with surprise. "Explain," the princess commanded. "You want to preserve Zephyrian culture and society, right? But what happens when you start forcing people to breed against their will? What happens when you base your entire future on taking what you want from others? You become exactly like the Vractor you just fought." Princess Lyra's eyes flashed with anger. "We are nothing like those savages, aren't you? They attack and take what they want by force. You attack and take who you want by force. The only difference is that you're more polite about it." Dr. Kira looked troubled. He raises an interesting philosophical point about cultural evolution and moral degradation. "I don't care about philosophy," Jake said. "I care about right and wrong, and what you're doing is wrong." He turned back to Princess Lyra. "You want my cooperation? You want me to help save your people? Then prove you deserve saving. Release all the humans you've captured, and give them a choice about whether to help you or not." "Impossible," the princess said immediately. "They are too valuable to release." "Then you'll get nothing from me," Jake replied. I'll fight the bonding process every step of the way. I'll resist with everything I have, and if you somehow force it on me anyway, I'll spend every day of my extended life working to undermine everything you're trying to build. Princess Lyra stared at him for a long moment. You would choose spite over cooperation. You would let millions die rather than accept your fate. I would choose freedom over slavery, Jake said firmly. And if you can't understand the difference, then maybe your species doesn't deserve to survive. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Princess Lyra's expression went through several changes before settling into something Jake had never seen before. Uncertainty. You force me to choose between my duty to my people and— She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. And what? Jake asked softly. And something I do not understand, but cannot ignore, she whispered. Dr. Kira watched the exchange with growing fascination. Princess, I believe the human has created an emotional response in you that our species has not experienced for centuries. Princess. Lyra looked confused and almost frightened. I do not know what is happening to me. When I think of forcing the bonding on him, I feel something wrong inside. But when I think of releasing the humans, I feel like I am betraying my entire civilization. Jake stepped closer to her. Maybe that feeling is your conscience. Maybe it's what your people lost when they bred emotion out of themselves. And maybe, he continued, reaching out to gently touch her hand, there's a way to save your people without losing your souls in the process. Princess Lyra called for an emergency session of the Royal Council 3 days after her conversation with Jake. Representatives from all 12 ships gathered in the main conference chamber through holographic projection. Jake stood beside the princess as she faced the assembled leaders of her people. Honored council members, she began, I propose a fundamental change to our reproduction program. The head counselor, an ancient Zephyrian named Elder Zethmer, leaned forward with obvious displeasure. The program is proceeding as planned. Princess, what changes could possibly be necessary? I propose we release all captured humans and instead negotiate a voluntary partnership with Earth, Princess Lyra announced. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several counselors spoke at once, their calm demeanor shattered by the unexpected proposal. Madness, declared Elder Zethmer. We cannot trust primitives to understand the gravity of our situation. The humans have already proven their value, Princess Lyra continued. Jake Miller's strategic thinking saved our fleet from the Vractor. His species possesses qualities we have lost, qualities that could strengthen us beyond mere genetic diversity. Jake stepped forward. If I may address the council. Absolutely not, Elder Zethmer snapped. This creature has no voice in our decisions. This creature just saved your lives, Jake replied firmly. And he might be your only hope for a real future. Princess Lyra held up her hand for silence. The human will speak. Jake looked at the projected faces of the Zephyrian leaders. You're all so focused on preserving your species that you've forgotten what made your species worth preserving in the first place. You've become so efficient that you've lost the ability to adapt, to grow, to feel. Emotion is weakness, declared another counselor. It leads to chaos and poor decisions. Emotion also leads to creativity, loyalty, and the will to fight for something greater than yourself, Jake countered. Your people are dying not just because of genetics, but because they've lost the will to truly live. Dr. Kira, who had been monitoring the discussion, stepped forward with a datapad. I have been studying human behavioral patterns since Jake's arrival. His emotional responses consistently lead to innovative solutions that our logical processes miss. One example proves nothing, Elder Zethmer said dismissively. Then let me give you another example, Jake said. Right now, you have 37 humans scattered across your fleet. Some of them are probably trying to escape. Others might be cooperating out of fear, but none of them are giving you their best because they don't want to be here. He walked closer to the holographic projectors. But what if you went to Earth openly? What if you explained your situation honestly and asked for volunteers? You might be surprised by how many humans would choose to help you. Why would any human voluntarily leave their world to help strangers? Asked another counselor. Because some humans are explorers who dream of traveling to the stars, Jake explained. Because some are scientists who would love to study your technology. Because some are people looking for a new life and new challenges. And because some are just good people who help others in need. Princess Lyra watched the council's reactions carefully. Jake has also suggested that the bonding ritual could be modified to preserve human emotional responses while still creating genetic compatibility. Dr. Kira nodded. Initial research suggests this is possible. We could create a partial bonding that extends lifespan and allows reproduction without fundamentally altering human consciousness. This grows more ridiculous by the moment, Elder Zethmer declared. We should proceed with the original plan immediately. The original plan will fail, Princess Lyra said quietly, her voice carrying new authority. I have observed this human closely. Forced participation will result in resistance, sabotage, and ultimately failure. But willing partnership could create something neither species could achieve alone. Jake felt a surge of admiration for the princess. She was risking everything to support a plan that went against centuries of Zephyrian thinking. And what of our immediate needs? Demanded a counselor. We cannot wait years for negotiations with Earth. We don't have to wait, Jake said. Let me talk to the other humans you've captured. Let me explain the situation honestly and give them a real choice. Some might choose to help you right now. Others might want to return to Earth as ambassadors to explain your situation. This is unprecedented, muttered one of the counselors. So was your planet dying? Jake replied. Sometimes unprecedented problems require unprecedented solutions. Elder Zethmer stood up, his ancient frame trembling with anger. I will not allow our survival to depend on the whims of primitive emotions. Then you condemn your people to extinction, Princess Lyra said firmly. Because I will not proceed with forced bonding. I have experienced something through my interactions with Jake that I believe is essential to our survival as a people, not just as a species. And what is that? Elder Zethmer asked, with disdain. Hope, the princess replied simply. Real hope, based on choice and mutual respect, rather than desperation and force. The council argued for hours, but Princess Lyra held firm to her position. Finally, a compromise was reached. Jake would be allowed to communicate with the other captured humans via secure channels. Those who chose to participate in the program would receive modified bonding that preserved their humanity. Those who chose to return to Earth would serve as ambassadors to begin formal negotiations between the species. Over the following weeks, Jake spoke with each of the captured humans. Their reactions varied wildly. Some were angry and demanded immediate return to Earth. Others were fascinated by the technology and opportunity. A few, like Jake, found themselves unexpectedly attracted to specific Zephyrians they had met. In the end, 12 humans chose to stay and participate in the modified bonding program. 25 requested return to Earth to serve as ambassadors. Jake found himself in the unique position of being the bridge between both groups. The day of his own bonding ceremony arrived faster than Jake had expected. He stood in a crystal chamber filled with floating lights, while Princess Lyra approached in robes that shifted through every color of the spectrum. Are you certain about this choice? She asked, as technicians prepared the bonding equipment. Are you? Jake replied. I am certain that whatever we create together will be better than what either of us could accomplish alone, she said. The bonding process was unlike anything Jake could have imagined. He felt his consciousness expand as Princess Lyra's mind touched his. But instead of losing his humanity, he felt it strengthen and deepen. Her logical thinking merged with his emotional responses, creating something entirely new. When the process completed, Jake found that he could feel Lyra's thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. More importantly, she could feel his. For the first time in her life, the princess experienced the full range of human emotion. While Jake gained access to Zephyrian logic and knowledge, 6 months later, Jake stood before the United Nations General Assembly on Earth, with Princess Lyra beside him. Behind them, holographic displays showed images of the Zephyrian fleet and the hybrid children that had already been born from the volunteer program. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake began, "I'm here to tell you about an opportunity that could change the future of both our species. The Zephyrians offer us knowledge, technology, and the chance to explore the galaxy. In return, they ask for what humanity has always given freely to those in need: hope, compassion, and a chance for new life." As he spoke, Jake felt Lyra's hand slip into his, their bonded minds sharing the same thought. They had found a way to save the Zephyrians without losing what made them worth saving. They had proven that cooperation was stronger than coercion, that diversity was better than purity, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from opening your heart to someone completely different from yourself. The vote to establish formal relations with the Zephyrian Empire passed overwhelmingly. As Jake and Lyra watched the results, they both smiled, knowing that their children would grow up in a universe where two very different species had chosen to build a future together. Based on understanding, respect, and love, the stars were no longer the limit. They were just the beginning.